The moment I realized my mother had tricked me, I was standing in the kitchen of my childhood home holding a printout of her cruise itinerary. 7 days. The Bahamas. Departing December 23rd. Returning December 30th. She had flown me home for the holidays. Paid for my plane ticket. Told me how much she missed me. Told me Christmas would not be the same without her oldest daughter there. She had cried on the phone. Actually cried. Said she wanted the whole family together for once. Said it had been too long since we had all been under one roof, and I had believed her. I had taken 2 weeks off from my job in Seattle. I had spent $300 on gifts I could not really afford. I had turned down an invitation to spend Christmas with my boyfriend's family, because my mother had begged me to come home. Begged me. Now I was standing in an empty house with my 3 younger siblings staring at me from the living room. Mila was 14. Jaden was 11. Cody was 7. They were looking at me like they expected something. Like they were waiting for instructions. My mother and her husband Frank had left for the airport 2 hours ago. They had not even had the decency to tell me themselves. They had left a note on the refrigerator. A note. Like I was some kind of hired help who did not deserve a conversation. The note said there was money for groceries in the envelope on the counter. It said the emergency numbers were on the fridge. It said the kids knew the routine. It said they would be back on the 30th, and they hoped I would have a wonderful Christmas with my brothers and sister. They hoped I would have a wonderful Christmas. My mother had flown me 1,500 miles to babysit her children while she went on a Caribbean cruise with her husband. She had lied to my face. She had manipulated my emotions. She had used my love for my family against me. And she had done it so smoothly, so perfectly, that I did not see it coming until she was already gone. I stood there reading that note over and over again. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Not sad tears, angry tears, the kind that burn when they fall. Mila walked into the kitchen. She was 14 but looked older. Tall and thin with the same dark hair I had at her age. She stood next to me and read the note over my shoulder. Then she looked at me with eyes that were far too knowing for a child her age. She said something I will never forget. She said, "She does this to everyone. You're just the latest." I looked at my little sister. At her tired face. At the resignation in her voice. And I understood that this was not just about me. This was a pattern. This was who my mother was. This was what she did to the people who loved her. Something shifted inside me in that moment. Something hard and cold settled into my chest. I had spent my whole life trying to earn my mother's approval. Trying to be good enough. Trying to be the daughter she wanted. And none of it had ever mattered. I was just a tool to her. A convenience. Someone to use when she needed something. I folded the note and put it in my pocket. I wiped my eyes. I looked at my siblings and told them we were going to have the best Christmas of their lives. And then I started planning how to make my mother pay for what she had done, not just to me. To all of us. My name is Ramona Chen. Most people call me Mona. I was 27 years old when my mother pulled this stunt, and I had spent most of my adult life trying to get as far away from her as possible. I grew up in a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona, in a house that always felt like a stage. We lived in a neighborhood called Desert Vista Estates, which sounds fancy but was really just a collection of stucco houses with brown lawns and HOA fees that never seemed to improve anything. My mother Lorraine was the star of every scene. Everything revolved around her needs, her moods, her wants. When she was happy, the whole house was happy. When she was upset, everyone walked on eggshells until her mood passed. My father was a man named Peter Chen who worked as an electrician for a commercial construction company. He was quiet, patient, the kind of man who absorbed stress instead of reflecting it. Looking back, I think he was already broken by the time I was old enough to notice. My mother had a way of wearing people down. He left when I was 6 years old. I remember the night he walked out. There was no yelling, no big dramatic scene. He just packed a bag while my mother was at a friend's house and told me he loved me and said he was sorry. Then he drove away and I never saw him regularly again. He moved to Colorado and started a new family and slowly faded out of my life until he was just a birthday card once a year and nothing else. The cards stopped coming when I was 15. I do not know if he forgot or if he just decided I was old enough to stop pretending. After my father left, my mother cycled through boyfriends like she was trying on shoes. Some of them were decent. Most of them were not. When I was 12, she married a man named Frank Hollister. Frank was a regional sales manager for a medical equipment company. He made good money, and he worshipped my mother like she was some kind of goddess. That was all she needed. Someone to pay the bills and tell her she was perfect. They had 3 kids together in quick succession. Mila when I was 13. Jaden when I was 16. Cody when I was 20. By then I was already in college in Seattle, as far from Phoenix as I could get without leaving the country. I came home for holidays when I could not avoid it. I sent cards and gifts. I tried to maintain some kind of relationship with my siblings, even though my mother made it difficult. My mother had a way of making everything about herself. When I graduated with honors, she complained about how tired she was from the flight. When I got my first real job, as a marketing coordinator for a tech company, she asked when I was going to get married and give her grandchildren. When I called to tell her I was dating someone serious, she spent 40 minutes talking about her own relationship problems and never asked me a single question about my boyfriend. That was just how she was. Selfish to her core. Incapable of seeing anyone else's needs as important as her own. I had accepted it a long time ago. I had built my life around minimizing contact and protecting my peace. But then she called me in early December. Crying. Saying she missed me. Saying she wanted her family together. Saying Christmas was not the same without me. And despite everything I knew about her, despite every lesson I had learned, I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Some part of me still wanted my mother to love me the way mothers are supposed to love their children. That was my mistake. Believing that she could change. Believing that this time would be different. I worked as a marketing coordinator for a software company in Seattle. It was a good job with decent pay and coworkers I actually liked. My boss was a woman named Patricia Okonkwo, who had become something like a mentor to me. She had encouraged me to take the time off for the holidays. She said family was important. She said I should go home and reconnect. I wonder sometimes what she would think if she knew what my family was really like. My boyfriend Nathan had invited me to spend Christmas with his family in Portland. His parents were warm and welcoming. His sisters actually seemed to like me. It would have been easy and comfortable, and exactly what the holidays should be. But my mother had called, and I had said yes. If you are new to this channel, take a second to subscribe and hit that bell. Also drop a quick comment and tell me where you are watching from. I should have seen the warning signs. Looking back, they were everywhere. The first sign was how insistent my mother was about the specific dates. She needed me there on December 22nd. Not the 23rd, not the 24th. December 22nd specifically. She said it was because she wanted to have time to prepare Christmas dinner together. She said it would be like old times. Mother and daughter cooking in the kitchen. Bonding. I believed her. The second sign was how she kept asking about my work schedule. How many days off did I have? Was I sure I could stay until after New Year's? She seemed so interested in the details. So concerned that I had enough time. I thought she was being thoughtful for once. I thought she actually cared about my life. The third sign was the one-way ticket. She said she wanted to buy my flight as a gift. A Christmas present. She said it was the least she could do since I was making the trip. But when I looked at the confirmation email, there was no return flight. Just one way to Phoenix. When I asked about it, she said we could figure out the return date later. She said she did not want me to feel rushed. She said, maybe I would want to stay longer once I was home. I should have bought my own return ticket right then. But I did not. Because I was too busy being grateful that my mother was finally acting like she wanted me around. The flight from Seattle to Phoenix took about 3 hours. I spent most of it imagining how the holidays would go. I pictured us decorating the tree together, opening presents on Christmas morning, watching movies and eating too much food and actually feeling like a family for once. When I landed, Frank picked me up at the airport. He was alone, which seemed strange. I asked where my mother was. He said she was at home getting everything ready. He said she wanted everything to be perfect for my arrival. Frank had always been awkward around me. I was not his child. I was a reminder of my mother's life before him. He tolerated me the way you tolerate a piece of furniture that came with the house. Present but not important. The drive to the house was quiet. Frank asked about my job. I gave short answers. He asked about Seattle. I said it was fine. We ran out of conversation after about 10 minutes and spent the rest of the drive in silence. When we got to the house, my mother greeted me at the door with a hug that felt rehearsed. She told me how good I looked. She told me how happy she was to have me home. She showed me to the guest room, which used to be my bedroom before she converted it. All my old things were gone, replaced with neutral furniture and decorative pillows that no one ever used. That night at dinner, I noticed my mother and Frank exchanging glances. Little looks that seemed to mean something. I asked if everything was okay. My mother smiled and said everything was perfect. She said she was just so happy to have her whole family together. The next morning I woke up to an empty house. I came downstairs around 9 o'clock, expecting to find my mother making breakfast. She had promised the night before that we would make French toast together. It was a tradition from when I was a child. The one good memory I had of her from my early years, making French toast on lazy mornings while she told me stories about her own childhood. The kitchen was empty. The living room was empty. The whole first floor was silent in a way that felt wrong. No television, no coffee maker running, no sounds of anyone moving around. I walked through the house calling out for my mother. For Frank, for anyone, nothing. No response. Just my own voice echoing off the walls. I checked the garage. Both cars were gone. I checked the backyard, empty. I checked the master bedroom. The bed was made. The closet door was open. Half the clothes were missing. A cold feeling started spreading through my chest. Something was very wrong. I found my siblings in the basement watching television. Mila was on the couch with Jaden and Cody on either side of her. They had bowls of cereal balanced on their laps. They looked up when I came down the stairs. Their faces told me something was wrong before anyone said a word. Mila looked tired, resigned, like she had seen this movie before and already knew how it ended. I asked where Mom and Frank were. Mila handed me her phone without saying anything. On the screen was a text message from my mother sent at 6 that morning. The message said they had to leave early for a work trip that came up suddenly. It said I was in charge of the kids until they got back. It said there was money on the counter and food in the fridge. It said they would explain everything when they returned. It ended with a smiley face emoji. A smiley face, like this was all perfectly normal and fine, a work trip. On December 23rd. The day before Christmas Eve, I read the message 3 times trying to make it make sense, trying to find some explanation that did not involve my mother lying to my face for weeks. I felt my stomach drop. I told the kids to stay put and went back upstairs. That was when I found the printout on the kitchen table. The cruise itinerary. 7 days to the Bahamas on a ship called the Caribbean Dream. Departure date December 23rd, return date December 30th. 2 passengers, Lorraine Hollister and Frank Hollister, luxury ocean view cabin, all-inclusive beverage package, shore excursions in Nassau and Cozumel. My mother had not booked this trip suddenly. The itinerary showed the reservation was made in October 15th specifically. 2 months before she called me crying about how much she missed me. 2 months before she begged me to come home for Christmas. 2 months before she manipulated me into flying across the country so I could babysit her children for free while she drank cocktails on a cruise ship. She had planned this. All of it. Every tear on those phone calls was fake. Every pleading word about wanting her family together was a lie. Every expression of love and longing was calculated manipulation designed to get me to Phoenix so I could watch her children while she went on vacation. I stood in that kitchen and felt something break inside me. Not my heart. I had armored my heart against my mother years ago. This was something deeper. Something that had been holding me together for years finally snapped. The last thin thread of hope that maybe my mother really did love me. That maybe underneath all the selfishness there was something real. That maybe if I just tried hard enough, I could have a real relationship with her. That thread snapped and fell away and left nothing but empty space. And the worst part was that she did not even tell me herself. She snuck out before dawn like a thief. She left a text message and a note. She could not even face me because she knew what she was doing was wrong. She knew I would never agree to it if she asked. So she did not ask. She just took what she wanted and left me to deal with the consequences. I read the note again. The one on the refrigerator door. The casual way she wished me a wonderful Christmas. The way she assumed I would just accept this and take care of her children like it was my job. Like I had no life of my own. Like my time and my feelings did not matter. Mila found me crying in the kitchen. She did not say anything at first. She just stood there watching me with those old eyes in her young face. Then she put her hand on my arm. She told me this was not the first time. She told me my mother had done this to Frank's sister 2 years ago. And to a cousin before that. And to a neighbor who had made the mistake of offering to help. My mother had a system. She found people who could not say no to her. She manipulated them with emotion and obligation. And then she used them until they had nothing left to give. I was just the latest victim. The oldest daughter who still wanted her mother's love badly enough to believe her lies. Standing in that kitchen, I made a decision. I was not going to cry anymore. I was not going to feel sorry for myself. I was going to take care of my siblings because they deserved a good Christmas. And then I was going to make my mother regret ever thinking she could treat me this way. The first 2 days were hard. I had to put my anger aside and focus on the kids. Mila was old enough to understand what had happened. Jaden was confused and kept asking when Mom and Frank were coming back. Cody was just happy to have someone paying attention to him. I took them shopping the day before Christmas. Used the money my mother had left on the counter. Bought a real tree because the artificial one in the garage was missing half its branches. Bought decorations. Bought ingredients for a proper Christmas dinner. Bought a few extra presents because the ones under the tree from my mother and Frank were pitiful. Gift cards. Socks. The kind of thoughtless presents you give when you do not actually care. Christmas morning was better than I expected. The kids seemed happy with their gifts. I made pancakes and bacon. We watched movies and played board games, and acted like a normal family for one day. Mila thanked me before she went to bed that night. She said it was the best Christmas she could remember. That broke my heart a little. 14 years old, and the best Christmas she could remember was being babysat by a sister she barely knew while her mother was on a cruise ship. After the kids were asleep, I sat in the living room and thought about what to do next. My original flight back to Seattle was not booked because my mother had only bought the one-way ticket. I had to book my own return flight, which cost me $400 because last-minute holiday travel is expensive. But that was fine. I could afford it. I had a job. I had savings. I had a life that I had built without any help from my mother. What I could not afford was to let this go. I started making a list. Everything I knew about my mother's life. Her job at the real estate agency, where she worked as an office manager. Her friends who thought she was wonderful. Her social media presence, where she posted pictures of her perfect family and her beautiful home. Her husband Frank, who did whatever she said because he was terrified of losing her. My mother had built a careful image. The devoted wife. The loving mother. The woman who had it all figured out. But behind that image was the truth. The selfishness. The manipulation. The willingness to use anyone and everyone to get what she wanted. I was going to pull back that curtain. I was going to show everyone who she really was. And I was going to do it in a way that she could not spin or explain away. My father had taught me one thing before he disappeared from my life. He said the truth always wins eventually. You can hide it for a while. You can bury it under lies and smiles and pretty pictures. But eventually it comes out. And when it does, it destroys everything fake that was built on top of it. I was going to help the truth come out. And I was going to enjoy watching my mother's perfect life fall apart. The day after Christmas, I started gathering information. I went through my mother's home office while the kids were watching a movie. Frank was sloppy with his paperwork. He left bank statements and credit card bills in unlocked drawers. I found records of the cruise. Total cost was almost $12,000 for the week. Luxury cabin, shore excursions, the works. I also found something else. Credit card statements showing regular charges to hotels in Phoenix and Scottsdale. Hotels my mother had no reason to be visiting. The charges went back almost 2 years, always on weekday afternoons. Always around the same time. My mother was having an affair. I photographed everything. Every statement. Every charge. Every piece of evidence. I did not know how I was going to use it yet, but I knew it would be valuable. I also went through my mother's social media accounts. She used the same password for everything. A combination of her birthday and Frank's birthday that she had been using since I was in high school. Her Facebook and Instagram were full of pictures of her perfect family, smiling faces, holiday celebrations, captions about how blessed she was. The hypocrisy made me want to scream. I started making copies of everything. I created a folder on my laptop with photos of the cruise itinerary, the hotel charges, the social media posts about family values, and screenshots of the text messages she had sent to me begging me to come home. Then I started reaching out to people. First I messaged Frank's sister, the one who had been tricked into babysitting 2 years ago. Her name was Donna, and she lived in Tucson. I told her who I was and asked if she would be willing to talk. She called me within an hour. Donna was angry. Still angry after 2 years. She told me the whole story. How my mother had convinced her that Frank was having surgery and needed someone to watch the kids. How she had driven 3 hours to Phoenix only to discover that my mother and Frank were actually at a spa resort in Sedona. How my mother had never apologized. Never even acknowledged that she had done anything wrong. Donna had cut off contact with Frank after that. Had not spoken to him in 2 years. She said it was the best decision she ever made. I asked Donna if she would be willing to tell her story publicly. She said she would think about it. That was enough for now. Next I reached out to my mother's coworkers. I had met a few of them over the years at various family events. One of them, a woman named Celeste, had always seemed uncomfortable around my mother. I sent her a message asking if we could talk. Celeste was cautious at first. She asked why I wanted to know about my mother's work life. I told her a version of the truth. I said I was trying to understand who my mother really was. I said I had recently discovered some things that made me question everything I thought I knew about her. That opened the floodgates. Celeste told me things I had never imagined. My mother was not just selfish at home. She was a nightmare at work. A complete monster hiding behind a professional smile. She had been taking credit for other people's projects for years. She would wait until someone finished a presentation or a client proposal, and then find a way to attach her name to it. She would email copies to the boss with small changes, and imply she had been the driving force behind the work. She had done it so many times that people had stopped putting effort into their projects, because they knew she would just steal them anyway. She had sabotaged colleagues who threatened to outshine her. One woman named Denise had been up for a promotion that my mother wanted. My mother started spreading rumors that Denise was drinking on the job. She planted an empty vodka bottle in Denise's desk drawer and then made sure the office manager found it. Denise was fired. My mother got the promotion. She had spread rumors about coworkers she did not like. Affairs that never happened. Complaints from clients that were fabricated. She had even gotten 2 people fired by making false accusations about their performance. She kept records of mistakes and exaggerated them in emails to management. She twisted small errors into fireable offenses. Everyone at the agency knew what she was like. But no one said anything because my mother was good at covering her tracks. She was charming when she needed to be. She brought donuts on Fridays. She remembered everyone's birthdays. She knew how to make people feel special right before she stabbed them in the back. She had dirt on half the office from years of carefully listening and collecting information. People were afraid of what she might reveal if they spoke up. Celeste said she had been keeping records. Emails. Messages. Documentation of my mother's behavior, going back almost 4 years. She had screenshots of messages where my mother admitted to sabotaging Denise. She had copies of emails where my mother took credit for other people's work. She had notes from meetings where my mother had lied to clients. She had been too scared to do anything with it. Scared of what my mother would do if she found out. Scared of losing her own job. Scared of becoming the next target, I told Celeste that I was going to expose my mother for who she really was. I told her I had evidence of lies and manipulation outside of work. I asked if she would be willing to share her documentation when the time was right. Celeste was quiet for a long moment. Then she said yes. She said she had been waiting for someone brave enough to take on my mother. She said she had been praying for this day for years. She said she would help however she could. The next few days were a blur of planning and preparation. I talked to Donna again. She agreed to share her story publicly. She wrote out a detailed account of what my mother had done to her. The fake surgery. The 3-hour drive. The discovery that she had been tricked. The way my mother never apologized or acknowledged any wrongdoing. I connected with 2 other people my mother had wronged over the years. An old neighbor named Barbara who my mother had accused of stealing packages. The accusation was false. Barbara had cameras that proved she never went near our house. But my mother had spread the rumor so far that Barbara eventually moved to get away from it. She lost friends. She was treated like a criminal by people who had known her for years. All because my mother wanted to blame someone for packages that she had actually forgotten to order. There was also a former friend named Valerie, who my mother had turned everyone against after a minor disagreement about a book club meeting. My mother had spread rumors that Valerie was having an affair with another book club member's husband. The rumor was completely fabricated, but it destroyed Valerie's reputation and her marriage nearly fell apart before the truth came out. Everyone had stories. Everyone had receipts. Everyone had been too scared or too tired to do anything about it. But I was not scared. I was angry. And I had nothing to lose anymore. The hardest part was the waiting. My mother and Frank were due back on December 30th. I had to keep everything hidden until then. I had to pretend I was still the same obedient daughter who would take whatever my mother dished out. Every time I texted her updates about the kids, every time I responded to her vacation photos with fake enthusiasm, I wanted to scream. But I stayed calm. I stayed focused. I kept my eyes on the goal. I bought my return flight to Seattle for January 2nd. That would give me 3 days after my mother came back. 3 days to watch her face when she realized what I had done. 3 days to see her perfect little world collapse around her. On the night of December 29th, I could not sleep. I lay in the guest room that used to be my bedroom and thought about everything that was about to happen. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. Tomorrow my mother would come home. And the day after that, everything would change. I was about to destroy my relationship with my mother forever. I was about to burn every bridge and close every door. There would be no going back after this. No reconciliation. No forgiveness. Just scorched earth where a family used to be. I asked myself if I was sure. If this was really what I wanted. If there was any part of me that still hoped things could be different. The answer was yes. Yes, I was sure. Yes, this was what I wanted. And no, there was nothing left to hope for. My mother had killed that hope herself when she snuck out of her own house to avoid facing me. My mother and Frank came home on December 30th around 4 in the afternoon. They walked through the door with suitcases and tans and big smiles, like they expected a hero's welcome. My mother hugged me and said she had missed me so much. She said the trip was wonderful, but it was so good to be home. She asked how the kids were. She asked if everything had gone smoothly. She did not apologize. She did not acknowledge that she had tricked me. She did not say a single word about what she had done. That made what came next even easier. I smiled and said everything was fine. I said the kids had a great Christmas. I helped them unpack and made dinner, and acted like the perfect daughter for one more night. The next morning I woke up early and executed my plan. First, I sent a carefully written email to my mother's boss at the real estate agency. I attached all the documentation Celeste had given me. Emails showing my mother taking credit for other people's work. Messages revealing her sabotage and manipulation. Everything. Second, I sent the hotel receipts to Frank. All of them. 2 years of afternoon hotel visits. I did not write an explanation. The evidence spoke for itself. Third, I posted on my mother's own Facebook page using her account. I wrote a detailed post about what she had done to me. How she had flown me home under false pretenses. How she had abandoned her children on Christmas to go on a cruise. How this was part of a pattern of manipulation and deceit that went back years. I included screenshots of her text messages begging me to come home. I included a photo of the note she left on the refrigerator. I included Donna's story and the stories of the others she had wronged. I tagged her friends, her coworkers, her family members, everyone who followed her carefully curated online life. Then I logged out of her account and went downstairs for breakfast. The fallout started within hours. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. One floor at a time, one pillar at a time, everything my mother had built crumbling into dust. My mother's phone began blowing up around 10 in the morning. Calls and texts from everyone she knew. Her face went from confusion to concern to horror as she started to understand what was happening. She kept refreshing her Facebook page, kept reading the comments that were piling up, kept seeing people she had known for years turning against her. The post had already been shared over 200 times by noon. People were adding their own stories in the comments. Women from her office, neighbors from the old neighborhood, people she had gone to high school with. Everyone had a memory of Lorraine Hollister being cruel or selfish or manipulative. The thread was growing longer by the minute. She found me in the kitchen around 11. I was making lunch for the kids. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Something normal. Something calm. She came at me like a hurricane. She demanded to know what I had done. Her voice was shrill, panicked. She looked like she had aged 10 years overnight. No makeup. Hair uncombed. Still wearing the pajamas she had woken up in. I told her exactly what I had done. Every detail. I told her about Celeste and the workplace documentation. I told her about Donna and the story she had shared. I told her about Barbara and the false package theft accusation. I told her about Valerie and the affair rumor that almost destroyed her marriage. I told her about the hotel receipts and where I had sent them. My mother tried to grab my phone. She lunged at me like an animal. I stepped back and held it out of reach. I told her it was too late. Everything was already out. Everyone already knew. The emails had been sent. The post was public. The truth was free. She started screaming, calling me ungrateful, calling me jealous, calling me a liar and a traitor and a disappointment. She said I had always been difficult. She said I had always resented her. She said I had ruined her life for no reason except spite. I stayed calm. That was the hardest part. Staying calm while she fell apart. Keeping my voice steady while she screamed herself hoarse. I told her she had ruined her own life. I told her she had spent years treating people like tools, and this was the result. I told her every person she had stepped on was now stepping back. I told her she had no one to blame but herself. She slapped me. Hard, across the face. Hard enough that I tasted blood in my mouth. I did not hit her back. I just looked at her. Looked at this woman who was supposed to be my mother. This woman who had lied to me and used me and discarded me my entire life. And I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just emptiness. Just the cold satisfaction of knowing that the mask was finally off. Mila was standing in the doorway. She had seen everything. Heard everything. She looked at our mother with an expression I will never forget. Disgust. Pure undisguised disgust. Then Frank came home early from work. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. He looked like a man who had just discovered his whole life was a lie. Which, of course, he had. He had gotten my email with the hotel receipts. He had spent the morning calling credit card companies to verify the charges were real. He had tracked down the hotels and confirmed that reservations had been made under my mother's name. He knew everything now. 2 years of lies. 2 years of betrayal. 2 years of his wife meeting another man in hotel rooms while he stayed home and trusted her. The fight that followed was the ugliest thing I have ever witnessed. Frank was not a loud man. In 6 years of knowing him, I had never heard him raise his voice. But that day he was loud. He was volcanic. He called my mother things I cannot repeat. He threw his wedding ring on the kitchen floor, so hard it bounced and rolled under the refrigerator. He said he wanted a divorce. He said he wanted her out of his house. He said he would make sure she never saw a penny of his money. My mother tried to blame me. She said I had fabricated the evidence. She said I was trying to destroy her family because I was jealous of her happiness. She said the hotel charges were for work meetings. She said Frank was overreacting. Frank looked at her with disgust and said he had already talked to the developer she was sleeping with. A man named Roger Whitmore, who worked for a commercial real estate company. Roger had confirmed everything when Frank called him that morning. He had even apologized. He said he thought my mother and Frank were separated. He said my mother had told him the marriage was over years ago. My mother had no response to that. For the first time in her life, she had no lie ready. No manipulation prepared. She just stood there with her mouth open while her world collapsed around her. By that evening, my mother had been suspended from her job pending an investigation. 3 different people had come forward with complaints after seeing my Facebook post. The documentation Celeste had provided was enough to open a formal inquiry. By the next day, Donna had given an interview to a local news blog about the babysitting scam. Other people my mother had wronged started adding their stories in the comments. The post had been shared over 500 times. My mother's carefully constructed image was crumbling. Everyone could see behind the curtain now. Everyone could see who she really was. I watched it happen from a distance. I did not gloat. I did not celebrate. I just watched and felt something I had not felt in years. Relief. Pure overwhelming relief. I flew back to Seattle on January 2nd as planned. My face still had a faint bruise from where my mother had slapped me. Nathan picked me up from the airport and held me for a long time without saying anything. He had been getting updates throughout the week. He knew what I had done. He knew why I had done it. He did not judge me. He just held me and told me he was proud of me. My mother did not speak to me before I left. She stayed in her bedroom with the door locked. I could hear her crying through the walls sometimes. Other times I heard her on the phone trying to do damage control, calling old friends, calling coworkers, trying to spin the story, trying to make herself the victim. It was not working. The evidence was too clear. The testimonies were too numerous. There was no spinning the truth away. Frank was staying at a hotel. He had packed a bag that first night and left. He came by once to pick up some things for the kids. He barely looked at my mother. When she tried to talk to him, he held up his hand and walked past her like she was invisible. The kids were confused and scared. Cody kept asking when things would go back to normal. Jaden was angry but did not know how to express it. He kept breaking things. Pencils, dishes. He threw a glass against the wall one night and then started crying. I felt bad about leaving them. Especially Mila. She had seen everything. She understood more than anyone what had happened and why. She had watched her mother's life fall apart and her family splinter into pieces. That is a lot for a 16-year-old to carry. Before I left, I sat down with her in her room. Her walls were covered with posters of bands I did not recognize. Her desk was neat and organized. She was doing homework when I knocked. Always doing homework. Always trying to be perfect. I wondered how much of that was about escaping our mother's attention by being invisible. I told her I was sorry for the chaos. I told her none of this was her fault. I told her she was smart and strong, and she was going to be okay. I told her that our mother's choices were not her choices. That our mother's mistakes did not define her future. Mila looked at me with those old eyes and said she was not sorry. She said someone needed to stop our mother from hurting more people. She said she wished she had been brave enough to do it herself. She said she had been collecting her own evidence. Notes about the lies she had caught our mother in. Screenshots of texts where our mother had been cruel or manipulative. She had a whole folder on her laptop. She said she did not know what to do with it. She said she had been waiting for someone to show her it was okay to fight back. I gave her my phone number. My real number. Not the one I gave my mother that went to voicemail half the time. I told her to call me anytime she needed to talk. Anytime, day or night. I told her I would always be there for her. I told her she was not alone anymore. Then I went back to Seattle and tried to rebuild my life. The next few months brought news in pieces. Small updates from Mila. Headlines from local Phoenix news sites that I found myself checking more often than I should have. My mother was fired from her job in the third week of January. The investigation Celeste had helped trigger found enough evidence of misconduct to terminate her immediately. They found emails where she had lied to clients. They found evidence that she had falsified sales numbers to make herself look better. They found complaints from the people she had gotten fired. The company did not want a lawsuit. They did not want bad publicity. They just wanted her gone. Frank filed for divorce in February. The affair my mother had been hiding turned out to be with a real estate developer she had met through work. The relationship fell apart once my mother's reputation was destroyed. The developer did not want to be associated with her anymore. My mother lost the house in the divorce. She moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. She tried to reach out to me a few times. Emails that I deleted without reading. Voicemails that I erased without listening. I heard updates from Mila occasionally. My mother had tried to blame everyone else for her problems. The kids. Frank. Me. The coworkers who had testified against her. Anyone but herself. But her social circle had evaporated. The friends who used to comment on her Facebook posts with heart emojis and compliments were gone. The people who used to invite her to parties and dinners had cut her off. She was alone. I wish I could say I felt sorry for her. But I did not. She had spent her whole life using people. Manipulating people. Taking what she wanted without caring about the damage she left behind. This was the natural consequence of that behavior. This was what happened when you treated everyone like they existed only to serve you. I had not destroyed her life. I had just showed everyone the truth. The destruction was her own doing. It has been almost 2 years since that Christmas. I am still in Seattle. Still working at the same company. Still dating Nathan, who proposed to me last spring. We are planning a small wedding for next fall. His family will be there. My siblings will be there. My mother will not. Mila is 16 now. She comes to visit me in Seattle during her school breaks. She is doing well in school. She has friends. She has plans for college. She has a future that looks nothing like the path our mother tried to set for her. Jaden and Cody are adjusting. Frank has primary custody now. He is not a perfect father. But he is trying. He enrolled them in therapy to help them process everything that happened. My mother sends me a card on my birthday every year. I throw them away without opening them. She has tried to rebuild her online presence with a new account. She posts inspirational quotes and pictures of sunsets. Almost no one follows her anymore. I used to feel guilty about what I did. Late at night, I would lie awake and wonder if I had gone too far, If there was a better way to handle it. If I should have just walked away and let my mother continue living her lie. But then I think about Mila. About Donna. About Celeste and all the other people my mother used and discarded over the years. I think about how long the abuse would have continued if no one had stopped it. My mother was a predator. Not a violent one, not an obvious one, but a predator all the same. She fed on other people's kindness and trust and love. She took and took and took without ever giving anything back. Someone had to stop her. Someone had to make her face the consequences of her actions. And since no one else was willing to do it, I did. I am not proud of everything that happened. I am not happy about the pain my siblings went through. But I am at peace with my choices. Sometimes the only way to stop a fire is to burn everything down and start fresh. Sometimes destruction is the first step toward healing. My mother built her whole life on lies. I told the truth. And the truth won. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for listening. Please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you do not miss the next one. Stories like this remind us that people who hurt others eventually face consequences. Sometimes it just takes someone brave enough to make it happen. I will see you in the next one.